scary video of a satanic ritual, crazy discovery underneath Jesus' tomb, and why you don't test drive before marriage, plus an update on Pope Francis. What's up, guys? I'm Father David Michael Moses. I'm a Catholic priest. If you enjoy these types of videos, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. So you might remember last week when I talked about a satanic black mass that was being planned in Kansas. There was a petition going around trying to get it to stop. It seems like it went ahead and happened, but it was limited by the governor there to just outside the state capitol. It seemed like they wanted to do something inside, but they just kind of kept it out on the steps. And it seems like someone has posted a video of what was actually happening there, and I wanted to go over that with you guys. It seems like there was a group that did gather outside the steps and they started to perform the ritual. Then something kind of wild happens. So let's go ahead and hop right in here. I'll screen record it so y'all can see it as well.
In my capacity as priest, I force you, whether you will it or not, to descend into this host and incarnate thyself into this bread.
So it's a little hard to hear, but it sounds like what he's saying is, in my authority as a priest, which is, I guess, a satanic priest, I command you, Jesus, to come into this bread. So there was some debate. I mentioned the video last week. In most cases, what Satanists do, they will actually steal a consecrated host from a church, which is why we all need to be on the lookout to make sure everybody is consuming the host at Mass. But when the bishop threatened to sue this group for stealing a host, they said, actually, no, we didn't steal one. The priest just consecrates himself, which if you're not a Catholic priest, you couldn't consecrate a host. But it seems like maybe that's what he's doing here. So either they actually did steal a host and this is part of the ritual, or they just bought a piece of bread and they're claiming this. Regardless, it's kind of scary with the words that he's using.
Jesus, partisan of hoaxes, bandit of homages, robber of the affection, hear me. Oh, you lasting foulness of Bethlehem, we command you and confess you. We command you to confess your impunity, your inaccessible crimes. We would drive the nails deeper into your hands. We would press down the crown of thorns on your brow.
Gosh, if you heard that, he said, we would drive the nails deeper into your hands. We would press the crown, like the crown of thorns, deeper into your head. So basically saying the crucifixion was a good thing and we would do more of it. Really, really evil.
We would bring the blood from dry wounds on your side. This we can and will do today by violating the quietude of your body. You profane.
Gosh, it's hard to even watch this. We will violate the quietude of your body. Speaking of Jesus' body.
Example license. You obstructed the stupid purities. Curse Nazarene, impotent king, fugitive God, silence God.
Golly, if this is real, depending on where he got the host from, it's hard to watch. So right here, what it looks like is he takes the host, he throws it on the ground, then he stomps on it, which is an act of desecration. And then a guy jumps in here, and what they're saying is this guy jumps in and consumes the host. He eats it, which would be the right thing to do if it was a consecrated host. And then the satanic priest starts to hit him, it seems like. And it gets violent.
No, I don't think so. I think it's legit.
And it looks like the police are now involved, as they should be if people are being.
Hail Satan!
Do you hear that?
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
Golly, that is unnerving. So a couple things here. First of all, like I said, it's hard to know if it actually was a validly consecrated host by a priest. My assumption would be is that they would try to get one of those. If you're trying to desecrate Jesus, then that would be the way to do it. But like I said, there seemed like there was some confusion there, whether it was actually consecrated by a priest. But if it was, then that man jumping in to consume the host would certainly be the right thing to do. Desecration of a host is extremely serious in the church. It actually is one of the few sins where we actually, as a priest, if someone confessed that they had desecrated a host and they were over the age of 18 when it happened, and that they knew that there was we call it a censure tied to it, which I'll explain what that means in a second. If they knew there was a penalty tied to it, then that's actually a sin that we actually have to petition outside of confession anonymously for the forgiveness of that sin. If you want another video on that topic, I could go into that. So let me know in the comments. But suffice it to say, it's extremely serious. In fact, one of the saints says that it's the greatest sin. I think it was Maximilian Kolbe who said that the greatest sin you can commit is the desecration of a host, because it's a sin against God himself, essentially against the body of God. Even if it wasn't a consecrated host, they were trying to commit an act of desecration pretty clearly. You know, he says very clearly, we would want to drive the nails more deeply into his hands. We want to violate his body, is what they're saying. This is a bit of a reminder that this stuff exists, that evil is very real. Even what they were saying in the end, I don't even want to quote it. I don't even want to say it out loud because it is so, so dark. But it is a praise of evil. My dad likes to say that the devil overplays his hand, that the devil, if he's doing what he really wants to be doing, you eventually see him. He goes too far. And we're starting to see it more and more in the culture with the reveling in sin, with this idea that my sin is something you need to accept, something you need to love. My sin in some way is who I am. We see like people identifying with their sins. And certainly in these kind of ways, we see evil just so clearly being made manifest. Really, really unsettling. And I think it'd be worth, like, if you're a parent, listen to this, I think it's good to think through, okay, how can I make sure I protect my kids from this kind of stuff? Because there are people out there who are trying to evangelize for evil. There's not always a good intention behind it. So it seems like that's all we really have on video. But if you look into it a little bit more, it says that the Satanic Grotto president, Michael Stewart, actually tried to get into the State House to do the Black Mass. But they were told at the door that the permit that they had was not for inside, it was for outside. And there was some kind of scuffle. So this other guy comes in and he tries to take some papers from the Satanic guy, and it seems like the Satanist then punched him, which means police got involved and actually arrested the Satanist. And they, I would assume, took him into custody. Surprise, surprise, the Satanists weren't being nice. That shouldn't be too much of a shocker. But yeah, overall, a good reminder that this stuff is real. And I would say, like, in your community, try to get rid of this stuff before it gets to this point. And then I think I mentioned in the last video, but it's good to mention again. Watch out in your churches. It's good to be on the lookout. Have your kids, if you're Catholic, make sure your kids are consuming the host immediately when they receive it. If you bring someone with you to Mass who isn't Catholic, make sure they understand they're not supposed to receive the host. I think we can all be very careful as a community to watch out for the body of Jesus. So when people over here are desecrating the body of Jesus, what can we do as Catholics? Well, we can show care and love for the body of Jesus. We can receive the host with reverence and security. That's what the idea of reparation is. You hear this idea of reparation in the church, reparation for the Sacred Heart of Jesus, that kind of thing. It's that people have hurt Jesus in the past, and we can say, as Christians, Jesus, we want to love you because you have been hurt by others. So the way we receive the Eucharist means a lot to Jesus. Let's jump over to something else a little bit more fun, not so dark. They have found underneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre a garden, and this is really scripturally significant. If you're familiar with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it's what we believe is the tomb of Jesus. It's this small little space, just big enough for somebody to have been buried in. You can actually say Mass in kind of the crypt around it. It's a beautiful church, very interesting because it's a place of interest for the Catholic Church, obviously, for the Orthodox Church, and for the Armenian Church. But there's another church, there's another family who kind of keeps guard over it for those churches, because everybody kind of wants control of it. Of course, it's a very sacred site. So there's another family that actually has the key to it that opens and closes it so everybody can go in, but they're kind of like an unbiased third party there, the Church of Holy Sepulchre, to make sure everybody kind of is able to work with each other and to cooperate. So it's a really unique dynamic. I'm not sure how many other places are like that in the world, but if you haven't been there, I would definitely recommend going there. And this new article came out saying that in Jerusalem's holy city, or old city, beneath the ancient stones of the church of the Holy Sepulchre, again, the body of Jesus, archaeologists have uncovered, not the body of Jesus, the tomb of Jesus, archaeologists have uncovered traces of what was a garden, complete with olive trees and grapevines. The discovery offers a striking echo of the Gospel of John, which places Jesus' crucifixion and burial in a garden. So listen to this. Gospel reads, "Now in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb, in which no one had ever been laid. So because it was the Jewish day of preparation, they laid Jesus there." John 19:41 through 42. So the scripture says there's a garden where they laid Jesus, and now 2,000 years later, in the place that we've all said Jesus was laid, we just discovered a garden. Kind of interesting. The archaeological team, led by Professor Francesco Romana Stasola of Sapienza University in Rome, made the discovery during a large-scale excavation beneath the basilica's floor. Through the archaeobotanical and pollen analysis, they found evidence of olive and grape cultivation dating back roughly 2,000 years. Perfect timing. The strata belonged to the pre-Christian area, confirming that this was not just urban terrain, but living land, likely agricultural, before becoming sacred ground. So yet again, we're seeing science confirm things that the faith has taught. This is cool because the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has long been revealed as one of the most sacred sites because we believe it's where Jesus was buried. So it's really cool to see 2,000 years later that the science is backing that up. People sometimes will question, like, okay, this was 2,000 years ago. How do we know that Jesus was actually buried there? I know a lot of people would like to think that, but how can we actually know? So when you go on pilgrimages to these holy sites, the way they describe it is that if something really, really significant happened here, let's say some really, really significant either tragedy or super miraculous event happened in your neighborhood, you would tell your kids about it. You would tell them where it happened. They would believe you, right? And if it was a big enough thing, they would remember it, and they'd probably tell their kids about it. And their kids would say, yeah, it happened right here. So we believe that 2,000 years ago, there was a man crucified who then 3 days later came back to life. That was the story going around. You don't quickly forget where that happened, right? That's an important piece of information, especially if you believe that man was God. And that gets passed on from generation to generation. And it's important to these people. It's important to them. It isn't as though there was some random period in the middle where it's like, oh, well, nobody knows where it could have happened. There is some consistency to even an oral tradition that people are taking very, very seriously. So pretty cool that tradition that's being held up is backed up by scripture. So love that. I saw this little reel I wanted to react to. People sometimes say, maybe this is a discussion from more mature audiences, but say that, before marriage, you don't want to save yourself for marriage because you want to test drive a little bit. You want to know what you're committing to. And I found a really interesting video of guys talking about this that I thought was very, very profound and very, very well put. So let me pull it up right here, and then we can talk about it.
I love the Lord. Mm-hmm. I do plan to get married, but there's no way I'm marrying somebody before I have sex with them because I need to know what I'm dealing with for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Talk to this person.
So the guy asking that question, he's not actually asking that question. His name is Lecrae. He's a Christian rapper. It's a hypothetical, but it's one that comes up a lot. It's a good question.
This whole idea of I've got to test drive something before I'm, fully commit into it. Let's just have the conversation about that. So let's use a car. Yeah. I'm not going to buy a car unless I test drive it. Mm-hmm. There's not a car that you've ever kept for 45 years. I test drove the car, I bought the car, and then I traded it in 7 years later for an upgraded model. So even the idea of test driving means that there's no long-term commitment.
So people saying, I need a test drive before I buy it. you're comparing car to a marriage. And that is a horrible mentality to start with, is that your long-term commitment to a spouse is the same as your commitment to a car.
Because what it means is I'm in until I can find something better that I can afford. Your ability.
That is so good. That when you buy a car, you're basically just, this is the best I can afford. I'm going to keep this till it doesn't work for me and get another one. Horrible mentality to marriage. People go into relationships like that sometimes, but you're setting yourself up for a huge amount of failure. This is not your forever home in this car. You have not committed to love it until you die. Totally different situation.
To control yourself prior to saying I do is also your first test of, can I keep my commitment till death do us part?
Oof, so good. That the first, marriage is all about commitment, right? Ups and downs, through the good and the bad, it's all about commitment. So being able to save yourself for marriage is the first test of your commitment. And I would say the same thing too, if you're looking for somebody who you want committed to you, the first test of if they can stay committed is if they can save themselves for marriage as well. So well said. You know, I've heard people say, the people maybe living together before marriage, so having intercourse before they get married, all that means is that they're comfortable having intercourse with somebody they're not married to. People say, oh, well, we're going to get married. Well, you're not married now. So right now, your boyfriend or girlfriend or your fiance is having intercourse with somebody they're not married to. Now, it might be you, but you're not married. So what that means is after you get married, all you know is that both of you guys are comfortable having intercourse with people you're not married to. You're practicing for failure. Jordan Peterson has a great line too. He says people who have had a bunch of relationships, and presumably like sexual relationships as well, all you know is that they're good at leaving their relationships for another one. That's all you know. If you've dated 20, 30 people, if you've lived with a few different people, all you know about yourself or all you know about the other person is that they're good at not committing. That's it. That's the problem with the test driving mentality, is that all you've learned is that you're not good at committing. That's all you know. Some of the comments I thought were kind of interesting too. Somebody actually said too, like if you need to have intercourse before you're married, all you're really saying is that you're probably over prioritizing that in the relationship, that there are other things that are a lot more important. At the end of the day, like you can't test drive marriage, because marriage is in itself a change that happens in the two people where they become one flesh forever. You can't test commitment. You can't test being one flesh. An analogy would be like, you can't test heaven. Heaven is perfect unity with God forever. And you only get there by giving up everything to find it. You can't test drive that. You can't test drive being a billionaire. You have to get there. You can't test drive being a saint. You have to get there. You can't test drive marriage. You have to be in it in order to know what it's like. So I just love that, the way he framed those things. Final little thing before we sign off for the day. Little update on Pope Francis. Things were looking very, very dire there for a moment, but he seems to be doing much better. They interviewed a doctor that worked with him, and the doctor said, I can say that twice the situation was lost, and then a miracle happened. So it seems like twice it seemed like the Pope was about to die, and then something miraculous happens, what this doctor is saying. And then kind of funny, he said, of course, the Pope was a very cooperative patient. He went through everything without complaining. So that's good. The Pope, as our spiritual father, is patient through suffering. That's all I got for you guys today. Let me know if you're still enjoying this new, longer format. We'll have another one of these for you in a day or so. And let me know in the comments what other things you maybe would like to see. And we'll see you next time. God bless you guys.